Next story I wanted to talk about is about a guy named Stu Peters. So he's been doing some weird stuff lately, to say the least. I've talked about him before, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a refresher on who he is. I wanted to show you this clip. It's from early December 2021. Check this out. It's with Deanna Lorraine.
I wouldn't be surprised if this so-called cold, the virus, the flu that I have right now was a targeted attack on me. Do you speculate that some of that might be going on as well?
A targeted attack?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
I guess he's caught coronavirus. Not funny. I believe that I have coronavirus at this moment currently. I don't want anybody to get hurt or die or suffer at all. Anybody. I think human life is the most valuable thing in the entire universe. So don't consider that funny, but I do think it's fucking hilarious that he believes that this was a targeted attack against him by the deep state. And it seems to me like Deanna Lorraine is having a little bit of trouble buying this. Listen to her voice when she says this.
A targeted attack?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like the bio...
Does she fully buy this, do you think? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, she's a propagandist, so she doesn't have to fully buy anything to go along with it.
The sociopath Tony Fauci, when he chimerically engineered this taxpayer-funded, lab-originated, intentionally released Wuhan, China virus.
How many buzzwords can you fit in there, Mr. Stu Peters? Basically, everything he said was a lie. Most of my viewers probably know that. I just want to put it on record so everybody is aware. In case you're coming into my channel for the first time or something. All of that was bullshit. Basically, every single word out of his mouth just now was bullshit.
That could probably be used against people automatically. I mean, people, Republicans, conservatives, talk show host people being targeted with this virus, right? I mean, don't you think? So they can paint paint the picture about, oh, well, Stu Peters got the coronavirus. He did it to himself because he's not vaccinated.
Right. Yeah, you don't think that there's a possibility that maybe the reason that you caught it was because you weren't being careful? The CDC, I mean, just think this through for a second. The CDC's given us guidelines, and it's not just the US CDC. China's been giving the same guidelines to their people. So is the UK, so is Australia, so is Canada, so is everybody. Worldwide, the guidelines are wear masks, be careful, social distance, 6 feet apart if possible, and get vaccinated if you can. Those are the guidelines. That's not just one corrupt country, if that's how you want to view it. That's how pathogens work. You should have learned about this stuff in 6th grade. At least the very basics of it. And he's sitting here like distrusting the most basic shit. It blows my fucking mind. And somehow he's drawn the conclusion that it's not because he wasn't being careful. It's not because he didn't get vaccinated. It's not because he didn't wear a mask. It's not because he didn't social distance. It's because he was targeted. Because people don't like him. As if people give a shit, honestly give a shit about him at all. You know what Russia did, actually? Do you guys remember Alexei Navalny? You remember him? Navalny? The dude was like super careful, would like change hotel rooms in the middle of the night and stuff like that because he believed that Putin was onto him and was trying to like kill him. And guess what? One day on a plane, it turns out he had been poisoned. And then he got a recording of the person that did the poisoning. He got the guy on voice recording admitting to it. You would think if they were going to infect him with something, it would just be a poison, right? Why the virus of all things? I'm trying to work my way through this situation logically, and there's just no logic to be had here.
Last week with the World Economic Forum launching this bubble gun that you just point a gun basically and someone gets a vaccine. I'm sure that they have the power to, target somebody to get COVID.
If they actually had this bubble gun, quote unquote, as they're describing it, and it actually functioned and it wasn't like this sci-fi fantasy, then they wouldn't have to ask people to get vaccinated in the first place, right? They just go around popping vaccines into people. I understand that this technology is being researched right now, or some form of this technology, but it's not like the kind of thing where you stand 20 feet away and you just pull the trigger and now people are vaccinated. It does not work that way. That is just a fantasy that she's concocted in her mind. I mean, they wouldn't even have to ask people to get vaccinated in the first place if this was a reality. It's just feeding into the conspiracy theories that she and Stu Peters like to prattle on about, for lack of a better term.
You just point a gun basically and someone gets a vaccine. I'm sure that they have the power to, target somebody to get COVID. All of the very prominent Republicans and people who have been outspoken against vaccines, pastors, etc., suddenly they come down with a bad case of COVID and it makes the news. Anti-vaxxer, anti-masker pastor comes down with COVID. It's all too suspicious. And I absolutely think people are being targeted.
Well,
yeah. Do you think it's a possibility that maybe there's just a worldwide pandemic happening? I mean, if this was like a localized situation to the United States, then I guess I could be a little bit closer to understanding their situation or their mindset here. But every country in the world is dealing with this right now, even like tiny countries, even little itty bitty guys that aren't really involved in like the United Nations or trade deals with bigger countries or whatever else. Like tiny countries are dealing with this. Everybody is. I just don't see how they can sit here and logic their way into this position. Honestly, they're not using logic at all. There's no logic involved here. They have a conclusion that they start from and they work backwards from there. So anyways, that's Stu Peters. That's the kind of person that we're dealing with right now. I just wanted to give you guys a refresher on him before we move on to the next clip that I have from him. Check this one out. This one is from late December 2021. So last one was from early December. This one's from late December. I think this is immediately before Christmas based on the fact that there's a Christmas tree in the background. So give this one a listen. He's talking to his supporters right now.
There's a lot of people here that we're about to arm with disinformation, and don't let me...
Arm with disinformation, you say? Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with you on that one. I know. I mean, you've been doing that for a long time.
That we're about to arm with disinformation, and don't let me get into the parts of the Constitution about how we're just going to come and arrest these people. So they have the opportunity to repent and to back away from the conspiracy, to get out of the criminal conspiracy to smother our rights, and then they can save themselves. But we're turning this up to full tilt now. For anybody who's saying, oh, that's never going to work, get out of here. Beat it, nerd. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. And for everybody that's always been saying all along, nothing's ever going to happen. No, we're going to make it happen. Because the people's will is the law. Period. So I hope that you soldiers are ready to go to battle. We have been armed with information. We have put a team together of people. Actually, God has put a team of people together.
Okay, let me give you a basic summary of what he's saying. He's basically saying that there's a conspiracy happening in the world right now in the United States. And if people don't stop feeding into that conspiracy, like if the people at the top don't stop, like, the deep state doesn't stop their stuff, then he's going to get his soldiers together and do something about it. That's what he's saying. That's his whole premise here behind this video. I think what he's talking about right now is not just COVID restrictions, but like vaccination and vaccine mandates and all that other stuff. He's got this really weird obsession with this stuff. But he's almost dog whistling to QAnon. I've never heard him come out and endorse explicitly QAnon. But I do hear him say a lot of QAnon messaging a lot of the time. What he's kind of talking about right now is the storm. I'll tell you what, why don't I just show you what a real QAnon member has to say about the storm. This is an actual QAnon member, incredibly high up in the QAnon movement, actually. He goes by the Praying Medic. His name is Dave Hayes. He's the guy on the right here, the bigger bald guy. This is him telling us that this is what's going to happen when the storm hits. This video came out May 2019. So what he's describing, he believes was going to happen between May 2019 and May 2020. Give it a listen real fast.
Q has often said, especially over the last 6 months, this is going to be the end of the D Party. The end of the Democrat Party. Okay, now, if you are, average person listening, watching Q, like, what do you mean the end of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not going to end. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you how the Democrat Party is going to end.
Okay, now he's going to describe exactly what they believe the storm is. For lack of a better term, the storm is basically like QAnon's end times prophecy.
What we are going to see in the next year unrolled is likely hundreds of members of Congress, most of them Democrats, some Republicans. All right, they're going to be arrested and they're going to be prosecuted for corruption. Q said that people in Congress were warned the storm is coming, and they were told, if you are playing the game and you are in Congress when the storm hits, you're going to be prosecuted.
So basically the storm is the idea that like a bunch of people at the top, congressmen and others, not just political actors, but other people at the top who are involved in the cabal, as they call it, they're going to be toppled. There are going to be mass arrests. And they believed that Donald Trump was going to be at the head of the storm. He's going to be the one pushing this forward. He's going to be the one telling the military, specifically, to arrest these people. And they also believed that there were going to be mass executions following that. Completely disconnected from reality. There is no basis for any of that. But I will tell you this. They believed that January 6th was going to be the storm. Before it happened, they believed that that's what it was going to be. They believed they were going to get into the Capitol and arrest these people and perform mass executions. That's what they were shooting for. That's why they erected gallows out back. That's why they had zip tie handcuffs with them. That's why they had guns and all that other stuff on January 6th. They believed that it was going to be the storm. Despite the fact that their attack failed, Dave Hayes specifically claims currently, now to this day, that the storm is still coming. It's on its way. He believes that it's still going to happen despite the fact that January 6th was supposed to be the storm. So what Stu Peters is talking about here is a new storm. He released this video in late December around Christmas 2021, a year after January 6th took place. Let's keep listening.
Of people, actually, God has put a team of people together that have the contact information, the technology, the know-how, the knowledge, the wherewithal, and the platforms to make this happen on a huge scale. On a huge scale. I hope you're ready, and I hope you're excited. If we don't want dominion, then we take dominion away.
This guy lives in a delusion. Really. He lives in a delusion. If you're unfamiliar with Dominion, around the time of the 2020 election, there were a bunch of claims about Dominion voting systems. They're just these paper counters, basically. You put the ballots in this counter, and it checks it's like a Scantron. You just put it in the Scantron, and it checks the circles, and it tallies it up, and then gives you a final number. And there were a bunch of conspiracy theories, which were 100% completely untrue, that Dominion voting systems rigged the votes and blah, blah, blah. Just all the same shit that we'd been hearing for, the entire election season. So he's saying here, if we don't want Dominion, we just get rid of Dominion because we are the people and we make the decisions for the government and blah, blah, blah.
Then we take Dominion away. We, the people. If we don't like a certain set of laws or legislation, then we alter it.
Yeah, that's called democracy. It's called democracy. Have you heard that word? Are you in favor of that word, Stu Peters? Because from my vantage point, it looks like you aren't in support of democracy. The things that you've said on your program, the movements that you've supported, the people that you've had on as guests, do not tell me that you're in favor of democracy. I have to tell you, it looks a hell of a lot like you're in favor of toppling the U.S. government right now and replacing it with a dictatorship that can change it to what you want it to be.
A certain set of laws or legislation, then we alter it or dissolve it. If we don't like a certain way that government is set up, then we alter it or abolish it. I'm telling you now is go time.
Yeah, now he's, as far as I can tell, he's just coming out and saying he wants to get rid of the democratic system. He wants to dissolve the system that we're currently using right now. and put in a new system. The closest form of government that we're at today is a dictatorship versus democracy. It seems to me like it's between those two options right now. Obviously, there are a bunch of different government options. I mean, you can have all kinds of different things set up as far as a government goes. But the two that we're battling between right now in the U.S. are democracy and dictatorship. So I guess he wants to dissolve democracy. That's kind of what I'm picking up from his speech here. He was referring to them as soldiers a minute ago. He was saying we need to be ready. Are you guys ready, soldiers?
So I hope that you soldiers are ready to go to battle.
That's the kind of language that I would expect to hear from somebody who's trying to dissolve or abolish, his words, not mine, democracy and install a dictatorship. That's fucking concerning. I don't know how else to take this message that he left us. There's another clip I wanted to cover by this guy, but before I cover the clip, I want to talk about something. I want to talk about this media outlet, if you will. It's called VDare. I don't know that I would call it a media outlet. It's more of a propaganda outlet, but this is on the Southern Poverty Law Center website. They have a section about VDare, okay? Let's give this a read and see what it has to say about VDare. Originally established in 1999 by the Center for American Unity, a Virginia-based nonprofit foundation started by English immigrant Peter Brimlow, VDare.com is an anti-immigration hate website dedicated to preserving our historical unity as Americans into the 21st century. Now run by the VDare Foundation, the site is a place where relatively intellectually inclined leaders of the anti-immigrant movement share their opinions. VDare.com also regularly publishes articles by prominent white nationalists, race scientists, and anti-Semites. In its own words, here's a quote from VDare themselves, but there's no doubt that something in that book got to President Donald Trump because the way his speech was set up. His announcement speech went to the question of Hispanic crime, specifically, and Ann Coulter's book is a very powerful statement of the fact that crime in this country is ethnically variegated. There's ethnic specialization in crime, and Hispanics do specialize in, particularly of children. They're very prone to it compared to other groups. Peter Brimlow on President Trump's immigration policies at the American Renaissance Conference 2017. Of course, Peter Brimlow, as I mentioned, is the person who started VDare. Here's another quote. Sam Francis, VDare.com, July 21st, 2003. America was defined almost explicitly, sometimes very explicitly, as a white nation for white people, and what that means is that there's virtually no figure, no law, no policy, no event in the history of the old white America that can survive the transition to the new and non-white version. Whether we'll want to call the new updated version America at all is another question entirely. It's a white nationalist outlet. I mean, there's no way of getting around that. That's what VDare is. Jewish activity collectively throughout history is best understood as an elaborate and highly successful group competitive strategy directed against neighboring peoples and host societies. Referring to host societies in the context of Jewish minorities almost makes them out to be parasites. It's like they're framing the Jewish communities as parasites on the countries that they live in. The verbiage that they use in this is pure propaganda. It's 100% propaganda. The objective has been control of economic resources and political power. One example, overwhelming Jewish support for non-traditional immigration, which has the effect of weakening America's historic white majority. Kevin McDonald, VDare.com, November 14th, 2006. So this has been going on for a long time. That's who VDare is. I wanted to give you an idea before we continue to the next clip. Watch this one, early January 2022, Stu Peters.
VDare publishes brilliant writers and thinkers that conservative outlets are too cowardly to give a platform to. Steve Saylor, Michelle Malkin, Ann Coulter, and a whole lot more. Some contributors have no choice but to use a pseudonym, as if they were dissidents in the USSR.
That's because they're white supremacists and they are full-blown, unadulterated racists. I hope that people worry about losing their jobs and their status in society if they publish views like that. That is fucking unhinged. to believe that being white is the best and America needs to be white and only white and everybody else needs to get out. What the fuck is going through these people's heads? Seriously. And what's going through Stu Peters' head that he decided it was a good fucking idea to endorse this website?
If VDare were allowed to spread their message without being silenced or censored or shouted down,
they are free to spread their message. They aren't silenced or censored. Shouted down, I guess. I mean, I hadn't even heard of VDare before recently. Maybe their message just isn't that popular. In fact, maybe he's trying to make it more popular in the US right now.
Or shouted down, they would have massive support from Americans of all backgrounds. And that's precisely why so many people desperately do not want them to spread their message.
They're perfectly free to spread their message, just like me, just like anybody else. We're all equals in this society, and we can all say whatever the fuck we want, according to freedom of speech. Look at Alex Jones. He was removed from every platform, everywhere. He's removed from iTunes, from Spotify, from YouTube, from all of it. He was taken off of everything. And what did he do? He did the equivalent of go out and stand on the town square, which is to create his own website and upload his videos there. That's what Alex Jones did as a response to being censored. And he's not small. InfoWars still exists and still uploads stuff, and it's still bringing in money. Censorship can only do so much in this society. You're still more than welcome to go stand in the public square and scream it. You're still welcome to go on your own website and say whatever you want. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop you. That is the free market, baby. And that's what VDare does, basically. VDare has their own website where they talk about whatever they want, and it just so happens to be white nationalist extremist content. Okay, but that's not censorship. I mean, they're just standing out there yelling into the void, and that's fine. If people want to listen, they are more than welcome to listen. It's just people don't want to, apparently.
I highly recommend that you go to vdare.com. Great publication, all kinds of insight, really brilliant people writing over there.
Tell me this dude is not a white supremacist. Tell me this dude's not a white nationalist. Seriously. How can you endorse something like VDare? I should go into a deeper dive into what VDare is all about. I read some quotes from the founders, but I should really talk about what they are in more detail. If you're interested, you can read about them, VDare, on splcenter.org, the Southern Poverty Law Center website. It's an interesting read, for sure, but it's incredibly concerning that we have real media figures out there endorsing this kind of shit. What is going through his head? I'll tell you what's going through his head, having a white America. That's what.